So I want to talk about love and pain and the relationship between the two of them. I happened to listen to two completely different, one was a podcast and one was just a video tonight. And it was really fascinating because there was a definite coincidence on the theme of what is love and what do we associate, or what are the connotations that we have with love. And sometimes there is this confusion of the painful aspect of love. Like, what is that? Is that love, or is that actually something else that we're actually speaking to rather than love itself? So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So some of the things that I was hearing was, well, what is our connotation to love? Even just the word love. And I was listening to a podcast on Aubrey Marcus's podcast. And he was talking with, what is her name? Laurel Erica, who talks about words, like the spell of the English language, and really what are the meanings of words. And it's quite remarkable, actually. So they were talking about the word love and how there is this kind of connotation now where love is associated, love hurts. Love, is painful. Love is all these things. We have all these connotations and all these ideas of what love is. And then separate to that, earlier, I was listening to Kyle Cease talking about how we mistake attachment for love. So we go, they broke my heart. He's like, well, no, they didn't break your heart. Your heart is your heart. They broke your expectation of what you wanted that thing to be. And that love is often associated with attachment, or I should say the other way around, that attachment is associated with love. Now, I don't know if I 100% agree with that, if I'm honest. I'd have to kind of really sit and think about that, because I guess if we're really dissecting it, then yes, attachment is different to love, and expectations and disappointment can definitely be tied into love. But if we're really, really, let's say we're really being in the purity of what each thing means, then yes, none of these things mean love, but they are associated with love. So, because if we go into what does love mean? And I don't have the answer for it. I don't know if there is one answer for it, but what love means to me, at least, is, God, it's so many things. For me, it's the essence of all that is. I really think it boils down to that. When I think of what is the source of all energy, to me, that energy would be love. You could call it consciousness as well. You could call it the universe, spirit, God. But whatever it is, it doesn't actually even matter, because for me, it's all that is, the existence of everything that is living and breathing. And I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the table and the cabinet and going, well, they're not living and breathing, but you could say they are alive with a kind of something that made it even, right? Consciousness had to make these things. And if you get really trippy about it, none of this is solid anyway. So I'm not going to go too far out on it. So everything in a way is alive, right? But love is really the energy of all that is. And I believe it's the essence of who we are. What we associate pain to love with is when we think of romantic love. But it's an interesting thing to think about, just when we are in a state of love. Love is unconditional. It can hold anything and everything. It doesn't see the things that are kind of dualistic existence in this realm, at least, sees. it doesn't see the good, bad, right, wrong, black, white, green, blue. It doesn't see color. It doesn't see sex. It doesn't see religion. It doesn't see anything. Love is love, and love can hold anything and everything, which is why I refer to it so much that when we're doing the inner work, we need loving attention, because loving attention can hold anything without judgment, because the very nature of love is it's unconditional and accepting. Now, the thing is that when we take love and we put it into a romantic context, romantic relationships trigger the shit out of us. They trigger all of our wounds. They trigger our insecurities. They trigger our limiting beliefs about ourselves, and the narrative, the story that we've made that goes along with that. It triggers all of our past experiences that start from our childhood and the relationship with our parents and siblings, if you have any, and then friends and extended families and teachers. And you know what I mean? Like the circle gets exponentially wider, concentric circles outwards. As you grow older, you have more experiences. And through those experiences, you kind of lather on layer upon layer of pain, potentially. Hurt. It's like why we say we have an experience and then all of a sudden become jaded because, I've had so many of these kind of experiences that it's made me jaded. Like I no longer believe in that anymore. I no longer have hope. And that happens a lot with love and relationship, because people have a series of what they might call bad relationships, and they go, I'm jaded. I don't have hope anymore for love, for true love. But the thing, it was never love. It was everything else that was playing in the context of love. And like I said, romantic relationships trigger the shit out of us. And so it's all of the others. It's not necessarily love. It's everything else that gets triggered and becomes painful. And then we associate that pain with love. So I kind of understood what Carl Cease was talking about when he was saying that we often mistaken attachment for love, because our attachment, which you could say if we didn't receive the original attachment, the really healthy fundamental attachment that we needed from our mother, and then of course our mother and father, you could say we're kind of always trying to play that out for the rest of our lives. And certainly I've come across this in my own work for more than a decade now, more than 12 years now, where most relationships are functioning on a codependent level. Romantic relationships, even friendships, and family dynamics tend to be codependent. And the reason why they're codependent is because we're kind of constantly living out an unconscious wounded state. We're all living out our childhood wounds unless we make them conscious, which is why we do this work. We make the unaware aware, the unconscious conscious. Because the moment you can do that, you have a choice to make. You have the awareness to make a different choice, and you change the pattern completely. And if you change the pattern, you change the entire trajectory, you could say. So if most of us are blind to that, if all of that is in the shadow, right? It's in the dark, we can't see it, then we're playing out all of these childhood wounds, even as adults, and in family dynamics get replicated. So all of this kind of comes back down to like, well, did I receive the love that I needed? The presence, the attachment, the skin to skin, the words that I needed, the affection that I need. I mean, God, in some ways, it's like we're so complex, and we're a paradox, because within that complexity, it's actually really simple. Because what do we need? Guess what it is? We need love, because we are love. So we need love to charge us, right? And becoming an adult, I think, is really about understanding how to be the source of that love that we're reaching for, yearning for, desperate for sometimes, from the external. And the reason why we have the association of I need to get it from the external is because when we're babies, we need that external love. We are totally dependent on our parents to take care of us. Otherwise, we will not survive. We are one of the We take the longest to kind of be independent. But again, if things are unconscious, what we're creating is not an interdependence between people, but we're creating a dependency, a codependency, because interdependence comes by I take self-responsibility for my actions and my everything, really, for my state of being. It doesn't mean that doesn't mean self-blame. It doesn't mean that everything is your fault. It also doesn't mean that everything is somebody else's fault, right? Interdependence is like we're all in this tango together. So an example, as a parent, I'd love to say I'm a conscious parent that, is always going to be like positive and knows exactly how to communicate with my child and I can keep it zen. And I don't actually think that's conscious parenting. I'd love to be a super calm parent 100% of the time, but I'm a human being and I can't be calm 100% of the time because sometimes my own stuff gets triggered, or sometimes I'm tired, or I'm hungry, or whatever else might be going on for me. And so there are, of course, going to be times where I might snap, or I might get irritable, or I might get something. But what I've learned to do is to, as quick as possible, sometimes I can actually catch it in the moment, but as quick as possible to take self-responsibility, to say to my daughter, I'm sorry, I'm sorry I'm talking to you in that tone. I'm just really stressed right now because I didn't sleep, or because something personal in my life, or whatever it is. I'm giving an explanation as to why in this moment I'm not showing up as good as I could, because I'm exasperated, or I'm stressed, or I'm tired, or I just can't reach into that like bank. I'm not charged. I'm not recharged enough, right? And so I just, in that moment, we're all human, and this is part of being human, is we need to really like forgive ourselves and have compassion for not always being perfect. Like, we're being human. And I think the more, I know this is a big tangent, I'm going to come back to the point, but the more that I take responsibility, but don't judge, shame, or blame my humanity, what I'm recognizing with my daughter is that she has an incredible ability to be empathic, because the moment I take self-responsibility, she doesn't have to hold it. She doesn't have to make a story about it that it's her fault, right? That she's the problem, that something's wrong with her. She can go, oh, okay, mama's having this experience. She's stressed, but it's not about me, right? It's not my problem to fix. I'm not bad. Like, because mama's feeling like that, I'm not the bad one, right? That's just, she's going through something. And so then she doesn't have to worry about that, right? She doesn't have to be in defense mode. She doesn't have to be in survival mode. She doesn't have to be afraid. So she can actually just be empathic. Now, I'm not saying it always works like brilliantly well like that, but my point in all of this is that we're not functioning most of the time like that. And so love becomes painful because our attachment to love isn't healthy, because we have unresolved wounding and pain. But we associate that pain with, I didn't get the love that I needed, or you're not giving me the love that I need, or you're taking away your love from me, or you're breaking our love, because whatever the word is, right? Whatever happens in a relationship. And so we have this association with love is painful, love hurts. And then people don't want to love because it feels too scary. It feels too vulnerable. It feels too fucking painful. So I'm one to look at things holistically, and at the same time, paradoxically, or not paradoxically, it's like the micro and the macro, or how everything is kind of interconnected. What makes a whole is the sum of all of its parts. And so there are different parts of us. So if we can see that there is love and the essence of love as who we are, as the energy that for me is the universe, for what is created when two people come together, but to almost hold that for a moment in its own let's like give it its own seat. And then next to that seat is attachment. And next to that seat is pain. And next to that seat is our wounding. And kind of in the midst of all of that is our humanity, this human, having this being that's having this human experience. And then, above all of this could be the witness, the observer, which I think I've talked about before, which you could call your higher self, your soul, your essence, whatever you want to call it. So there's all of these different parts that are sitting at the table together, having a conversation, trying to. Sometimes they argue. But like trying to, like wholeness to me is when all of those various parts can actually sit at the table and have a conversation and be compassionate towards one another. So I think when we're experiencing pain and we're associating it with love, it's really important to really be mindful of, well, what is the story that we're telling ourselves? Is it love that's painful, or is what's happening right now is that my wounding is being triggered because I have a need for love, and in this moment it feels like love isn't there, and so I'm in pain, or I'm scared, I'm feeling scared. So do you see what I'm saying? It's like, it's not like, oh, well, love hurts and it's an absolute. Love is painful and it's an absolute. That's why people go, I will never fall in love again. Women are that absolute. Men are that absolute. And that's how we form beliefs. When actually what we're experiencing is a feeling in relationship to that thing, in relationship to that woman or man, in relationship to love, in relationship to whatever the topic is, whatever the subject is. It's actually our feeling in relationship to that, which is where the pain or the suffering or the confusion or the anger or the resentment or whatever it is, it's actually the feeling. But we're mixing the feeling with the subject, with the topic. Does that make sense? I hope I'm explaining this okay. So maybe what would happen if we were to redefine or just rejig the perspective that like love is love. It will always be love. It will be that essence. It's abundant. It can't be taken away from you. You can't lose it, like, because you are it. And as I said earlier, I think a lot of what the arc of being human is that we come into this world as the essence of love. I think it was in my last podcast where I'm like, you don't look at a baby and go, oh yeah, that one's an asshole. You know what I mean? Like, you look at babies and they have that beautiful essence of just love. They're just so loving. It's in their eyes because the eyes are the window to the soul, and the soul is love. So we come into that, but then through the experiences that we have in life, we experience hurt or confusion, whatever the initial wound is, and then that brings us into this whole kind of very human experience. Like, if you want to look at it from a spiritual perspective, if you will, it's what brings the spirit down into the body to have a human experience. And then it is through the suffering and the pain where it creates this arc, it creates this point of tension where we have to then really go into ourselves and go, okay, why am I feeling this? What is the pain? What is the suffering? What is the fear? What is the anxiety? What is this humanity that I'm feeling? Because that's what's so unique to being human, is we have all these feelings and emotions and sensations in the heart. And through that, what's interesting is that you go in and you discover more about your humanity. You grow through that because you're learning, you're being stretched, and you learn, if you will, if you choose to, you learn about your humanity. And then the brilliant arc of it is that by learning more about your humanity and embracing your humanity, you remember your divinity again. You remember the soul and the spirit and the essence of love that you have always been, but you just forgot. That's what I'm saying. You can't lose it. We just forget it, or we feel disconnected from it, but we can't lose it. It can't, no one can take it away from us because it is us. It's like if we were to say, oh, that person, takes love away or whatnot. It's like literally like you can't pull an arm off, or if somebody pulls your arm, you're going to go with it, right? Because you are it. You are love. So being an adult is really understanding how, okay, on a spiritual, esoteric level, I could say you are love, right? But sometimes that's like, oh, it's like, shut up, Corinne. That's way too like abstract or too esoteric. And the human in us is like, well, how do I love myself? How do I do that if I feel like I'm unworthy or I'm not good enough or I'm not lovable enough, or all of these stories, these limiting beliefs that we have. Something's wrong with me. I'm bad. I'm not significant enough. I'm not something enough. And so, part of that arc and that journey is really understanding how to love yourself and how to hold yourself in love. But love is always the ingredient. It's the main ingredient of everything. And once we start to understand what love feels like within us, the embodiment of love as a feeling, as an energy, as a sensation, as something that we give to ourselves, as something that we hold ourselves in. You know what I mean? There's no inside and outside, and it envelops us and is within us. It's kind of beyond space and time in that way. Again, that might sound really far out, but what we're learning is how to love ourselves, and ultimately the path to getting to loving ourselves is acceptance. Is accepting that whatever we're feeling, thinking, experiencing is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a human experience. And if we take away the judgment, there's not so much suffering anymore, because all of a sudden it just is what it is. And then you can go, okay, what am I learning through this? What is it teaching me about myself? Like, we're getting to know ourselves more by accepting our entire humanity. And that's what's the unique journey that we have here, is because each and every one of us is completely unique. There will never be another you. Never. AI, anything, they can clone you. It's still not going to be you, because it's not going to have the essence of you. So we're kind of here getting to know ourselves on a deeper level. And when we can understand that there's nothing wrong with our humanity and our experience, and we can accept that, then we naturally fall into the lap of love, which has always been there. It's like, oh, welcome back home, right? Home is inside of yourself. Home is in your heart. Home is in your being. Home is in the part that goes, it's okay to be you. And when we feel that embodiment of love, then it's like, okay, even if you're in a relationship that's painful, if you know how to give yourself love, then love isn't the thing that's painful. It's kind of all of the other stuff that I talked about. You recognize, oh, that's what's getting triggered. It's the wound, or it's my disappointment because I had these hopes and dreams for this relationship, or, I don't want to feel alone, or we go, if there's a narrative and a belief system in place that's not conscious yet, then that's going to be on loop, right? That's going to be on replay. So what do we want to do? We want to create awareness around all of this, so that when we're in something that feels painful, we don't have to immediately make the association of, and therefore love is painful. But, being human is painful. Jesus, some shape or form, it's going to be painful at times. Like, my God, whether it's some kind of emotional pain, like I dropped a massive piece of wood on my big toe last week, and for 5 days I was in relentless pain and couldn't walk. And then after that kind of got better, and I had a kink in my neck. And then after that, I was going through some emotional stuff. So it was like my heart, it was like, oh yeah, pain. I think that's another thing. It's like, okay, this is all just part of the human experience. And if I don't judge it as good or bad or right or wrong, it just is what it is. Is it uncomfortable sometimes? Do we not like it sometimes? Sure. But again, the more that I could just allow it to be what it is and move through it. And it's like, if I need to cry, I'll cry. If I need to, channel my anger into something, I'll channel my anger into something. It's like, just allow the energy of what is there. Like, pay attention to it, listen to it, see what it's trying to tell you, feel it, and then it will move on. Don't feel it and it's going to stay there, like knocking at the door, like, are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? That's why distraction, numbing, transcending, it doesn't work, because there is no way. There's only transmuting what we feel. And we can only transmute by being with it and feeling it and accepting that it is, listening to what it's trying to tell us, show us, and then we move on from there, right? Then the energy can flow again. Not that it's not flowing, but you know what I mean? It's like, okay, once we've paid attention to it, we can get what we need from that, and then we can move on to the next experience, let's say. So to wrap it up, thanks for bearing with me. Yeah, what would it be like to just recognize that love is love, and whatever else we're associating with it is an experience of whatever the emotion is that comes with that experience, and to not create absolutes and definitions and ultimatums or whatever it is, but just to be, because really what pain should do, and we can experience pain in love because love is deeply vulnerable, because we are it. It's like, you could say that we are the closest to home when we're in love, when I'm in the state of being of love. I don't mean in love with someone else. Of course, that can happen. That's a good catalyst for it. But we're the closest to home, and it is deeply vulnerable. And so, yes, we're going to feel, maybe more heightened emotions. But all of it, like, what if it were all a catalyst to open your heart more and to bring you closer home to yourself? Like, how would that change everything if pain was actually a catalyst to open your heart more and bring you closer to home? Ain't that a thought? And in my experience, it's true. It might be fucking uncomfortable, excuse my language, but it really might. But that doesn't mean that it's bad. Like, I think about what is her name? Laurel Erica was talking about, of how you have to crack an acorn. You have to crack the shell of an acorn for the acorn to come out, and then basically plant the oak tree, which is going to give so much life and everything, but you have to crack through it. And you could go, shit, well, that's a painful process. Like, you have to break through something. So when someone says, my heart is broken, is it broken, or are you just cracking the shield around it, the armor around it? I could go into a whole other conversation, because someone could say, well, but you need to protect your heart. Yes, you need to, I would use a different word. You need to hold your heart with love. That's what I've learned for myself. We think of protection as, when we use the word protection, it's like shielding, armoring. If you shield and armor someone else from your heart, guess what? You're shielding and armoring yourself from your own heart. So holding your heart with love is far more protective than putting a defensive shield to keep others out, because you will keep yourself out of your own home, and you will lose the keys. And you'll be looking for the damn keys everywhere else, realizing like, oh shit, I need to come home to myself. I need to open the door to myself so I can come in and be warm and cozy and comfortable and find the peace that I've been looking for my whole life, which is what happiness is. Happiness is peace. So yeah, hold your heart with love, and then you will feel safer being vulnerable. You will feel more empowered being vulnerable, because you're holding yourself. You're there for yourself. And so then, no matter what the situation is, if it's scary or if it's painful or if it's deeply vulnerable or embarrassing or whatever the situation is or the dynamic is, if you feel safe within yourself, if you're residing in your own home, in your own heart, it's all much more okay. That's the simplest way I can say it. It's just so much more okay, because you're there with yourself. You're not alone. If you feel safe in your vulnerability, you'll be you'll feel safer being vulnerable with other people. If you feel like you can hold yourself with love, you will be able to be held by love by the other. As within, so without, right? To the degree of what we can do inside of us, is like exponential, as an enhancement of whatever it is from the outside that we experience in the same way, whatever the topic is. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that because this is a super duper long one. I could continue as always. But yeah, invite yourself to redefine how you relate to love and how you hold the emotions that you associate with love. And can you be present to those as just whatever sensation or emotion that they are in and of themselves, and let them be equal teachers that have something to show you ultimately about yourself. And let love just really be the essence of love. Okay, with that said, loving you all from afar. Please take it or leave it as feels right, as always, and to be continued. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.